There is a period of time so short that anyone can undertake it, and yet so decisive that it may quietly change the entire course of a life. 7 days, not 7 months of straining, not 7 years of technique, 7 ordinary days lived, from first light to final sleep, from the inside of a single chosen state, without oscillation, without checking, without returning to the identity you have decided to leave behind. Most people cannot imagine that 7 days could be enough. They have been taught that manifestation is a long labor, a slow accumulation, an effortful struggle against invisible resistance. And so they set out to work for years, and their years unfold with the pattern of struggle, and they wonder why they cannot break through. Stay with me until the end of this message, because you are about to receive one of the most quietly powerful practices in all of Neville Goddard's teachings. A practice built not upon the pressure of intensity, but upon the calm mathematics of consistency. When you understand it, and when you commit to it fully, 7 days of undisturbed inner occupation of the fulfilled state may accomplish what 7 years of scattered effort never could. You are not going to force a new reality. You are going to inhabit one quietly and steadily until it is locked in. Most people approach manifestation as an act of intensity. They believe that if they can only visualize hard enough, feel deeply enough, want passionately enough, the reality they seek will finally break through. They imagine the process as a great leap that requires enormous effort, and so they gather themselves for the leap, straining every faculty of their imagination, hoping to overwhelm the resistance of the world by the sheer force of their inner performance. And what happens is exactly what always happens with force. The intensity flares up for a moment. The vision is vivid. The feeling is powerful. There is a burst of certainty that lasts perhaps an hour, perhaps a day, perhaps a week if they are unusually disciplined. And then it fades. Something happens in the outer world that contradicts the vision. Some old thought returns, some old fear reasserts itself, and the intensity collapses, leaving them exhausted and confused, wondering why the manifestation did not stick. The answer is simple. Intensity was never the mechanism. Consistency is the mechanism. Reality does not respond to the peaks of your inner performance. Reality responds to the average of your inner state. The identity you occupy for one glorious hour has almost no effect if it is followed by 23 hours of the old identity. The subconscious mind, which is what actually shapes the outer world, does not measure intensity. It measures duration. It measures what you keep coming back to. It measures the steady, quiet, unbroken current of who you are being from moment to moment. This is why so much effort produces so little result. The effort was concentrated in flashes rather than sustained across time. The flashes felt significant. The sustained state was never established. 7 days changes this entirely. 7 days is not a long time. It is short enough that anyone can attempt it. And yet, it is long enough to establish something the subconscious mind takes as permanent, long enough for the old channel of identity to lose its dominance, and for the new one to become the new default. The 7-day state is not about doing more. It is about doing less, but continuously. Here is what changes everything. The subconscious mind treats sustained states as facts. It does not distinguish between what is objectively true in the outer world and what has been consistently occupied in the inner world. It simply accepts, as reality, whatever identity has been steadily held long enough to no longer feel like performance. 7 days of unbroken occupation is the threshold at which most identities cross from performance into acceptance. This does not mean that after 7 days the outer world will always show visible transformation. It means that after 7 days, something inside you has settled. The new identity has been set, like plaster that has finally hardened, like a stamp that has finally taken hold in the wax, like a photograph that has finally developed in the dark room of the subconscious. Once the setting has occurred, the outer world begins its quiet work of catching up. Sometimes this is visible within days, sometimes it takes longer, but the point of the 7-day state is not to force the outer world. The point is to fix the inner state so firmly that the outer world has no other pattern to reflect. Consider concrete being poured. When concrete is poured, it is liquid. It moves. It can be shaped, but it can also be disturbed. Anything that steps into it during the first hours will leave a mark. Anything that stirs it will change its structure. The concrete requires time to set, hours of undisturbed rest, during which no one walks upon it, no one prods it, no one asks whether it has finished setting. If a person, anxious about whether the concrete has hardened, walks upon it every hour to check, the concrete never sets. Each footprint disturbs the surface. Each visit prolongs the process. The very anxiety about the setting prevents the setting from occurring. Your new identity is such concrete, poured into the mold of your imagination through the assumption of the wish fulfilled. It requires undisturbed time to set. Every time you step back into the old identity to check whether the new one is working, you leave a footprint in the wet concrete. Every time you interrupt the state with worry, doubt, or verification, you prolong the setting. 7 days of not stepping into the concrete is what allows it to harden into the foundation upon which the new life is built. Consider also the photograph being developed. In the traditional dark room, a photograph is placed in a bath of chemicals. Slowly, the image emerges. It cannot be rushed. The developer needs time to bring out the details, and any premature exposure to light will ruin the image entirely. The photographer must trust the process. He must not open the door of the dark room to check. He must not turn on the light to see how it is going. He must wait in the dark for the appointed time. Your new state is such an image. It is developing in the dark room of your subconscious. Every time you turn on the light of doubt to see whether it is working, you expose the film and ruin the image. The 7-day state is the closed door. It is the trusting of the process. It is the willingness to sit in the quiet darkness of not yet seeing while the image forms. Consider also the loaf of bread rising. The dough has been mixed. The yeast has been placed. The bread has been set to rise in a warm, quiet place. It must not be disturbed. If the cook opens the oven every few minutes to see if the bread has risen, the temperature drops, the process is disrupted, and the bread falls flat. Rising requires undisturbed time. The heat must remain steady. The environment must remain quiet. The cook must trust that what has been set in motion is unfolding, even when she cannot see it. You are the dough. The assumption of the fulfilled state is the yeast. The subconscious is the warm oven. And your task, during the 7 days, is simply to trust the rising, not to open the door and let the cool air of doubt collapse what has begun to lift. So how do you actually practice the 7-day state? Not by adding new rituals, not by piling up techniques, not by turning your day into a performance of manifestation. The 7-day state is quieter, simpler, and stricter than that. Choose the state you wish to inhabit, not the goal, the state. The inner posture, the feeling, the identity of the one for whom the desire is already fulfilled. This is what you will occupy not as a technique, but as your ordinary way of being for the next 7 days. Then, upon waking each day, before your feet touch the floor, before the mind begins its usual restlessness, quietly return to the state. Feel the feeling of the fulfilled version of you, not with force, not with strain, simply the way you might return to a comfortable posture when you sit down in a familiar chair. This is your posture now. This is who you are being today. Move through the day carrying that state, not by announcing it to others, not by performing outwardly, simply by allowing the inner quality of the fulfilled identity to inhabit your movements, your reactions, your inner speech, your responses to the small events of the day. When the old identity rushes back to seize a moment, notice it, and quietly return. Not with self-criticism, not with drama, just as a musician returns to the note whenever the tune drifts. The return is the practice. Every return strengthens the state. Sleep is a great instrument of the 7-day state. Each night, before drifting into rest, Occupy the feeling of the fulfilled state deliberately. Let it be the last thing your consciousness holds before the darkness receives you. In this way, the state is not interrupted by sleep. It is deepened by it. The subconscious continues the work through the night, sinking the impression more deeply into the wax of your being, and then wake and continue. Do not check the outer world. This is critical. During the 7 days, you must resist the urge to scan reality for evidence of change. Every time you scan, you step into the concrete. Every time you check whether the manifestation is working, you break the seal. Trust the process. Occupy the state. Let the outer world unfold in its own quiet timing, and refuse to interrogate it during the setting. Do not talk about the practice with anyone. This is also critical. The 7-day state is a private discipline. To speak of it with others is to invite their doubts, their opinions, their skepticism into your inner room. Guard the door of the room. Let no one enter until the concrete has set. Do not oscillate. If the old identity returns for a moment, gently return to the new one. But if you find yourself indulging in a long conversation with the old identity, rehearsing its themes, giving it energy, you have stepped into the wet concrete. The 7 days do not require perfection, but they require unwillingness to return to the old state as a home. The old identity may pass through as a visitor. It must not be permitted to move back in. Now notice what happens as the days accumulate. The first day is often the hardest. The identity feels awkward. The old voice is loud. The impulse to check the outer world is strong. But you persist gently, returning again and again to the state. By the 2nd day, something quiet begins to settle. The state feels a little less foreign. The old voice is still there, but slightly less commanding. You notice, with mild surprise, that certain habitual reactions did not arise today. The morning worry that used to visit as soon as you opened your eyes did not appear. By the 3rd day, the state has begun to feel familiar. Not yet natural, but familiar. You do not have to reach for it as hard. It arrives more quickly when your attention returns to it. The old identity begins to feel slightly artificial when it rises, as though it were the pretending one now, and the new state were the truer thing. By the 4th day, the outer world begins to shift subtly, not dramatically, not visibly enough to point to, but something in the atmosphere of your days has changed. Conversations go a little differently. Small opportunities appear where none were expected. A message you have been waiting for arrives. A tension you had been carrying eases without explanation. Do not celebrate this yet. Celebration is a form of checking. Simply notice and return to the state. By the 5th day, you may notice that the state now maintains itself for hours at a time without any effort from you. It has begun to inhabit you as much as you inhabit it. The old identity has become quieter, no longer confident that this is home. By the 6th day, the shift has deepened enough that you begin to wonder if it was always this way. There is a strange sense of continuity, as if the fulfilled version of you had been here all along, just waiting to be noticed. The tension between the wish and the current reality has softened. By the 7th day, something has set. There is a felt sense of completion, of the concrete having hardened, of the photograph having developed, of the bread having risen. You do not have to reach for the state anymore. You simply live in it. At this point, the outer world may begin to reveal what the inner world has decided is true. The changes may come quickly. They may come more slowly. But the key event has already occurred. The state has been locked in. The pattern has been set. And what has been set within must, in its own timing, appear without. Some will ask whether they must do this only once, or whether the 7 days must be repeated. The honest answer is that once a state has been truly set, it becomes the natural resting place. You do not have to keep re-establishing it. It is now your default. Life may occasionally disturb the surface, but the concrete beneath does not need to be repoured. However, if you find that you have oscillated significantly during the 7 days, if you have stepped into the wet concrete many times, If you have opened the dark room repeatedly, then it may be wise to begin again. Not with frustration, not with the sense of having failed, simply as a craftsman begins again when the first pour did not set properly. The materials are still available, the mold is still there, the practice is always ready to be undertaken again. But most people, if they truly commit to 7 undisturbed days, find that once is enough. So as we come to the end of this message, take with you this single decision. 7 days. Not 7 months of scattered effort, not 7 years of technique. 7 ordinary days lived from the inside of a single chosen state, without checking, without oscillating, without permitting the old identity to move back in. Choose the state today, not the goal, the state, the inner posture of the one for whom the desire is already fulfilled. Then begin. Wake tomorrow in the state. Move through the day in the state. Sleep at night in the state. Wake again in the state. Repeat this for 7 days, gently, without strain, returning whenever your attention wanders, refusing to check whether it is working, refusing to talk about it, refusing to disturb the setting. When the old voice rises and says, "This is too simple, it cannot possibly work, 7 days is not enough," answer it gently. Say within yourself, "I am not asking you, I am not consulting you. I have chosen the practice, and I am doing it." When the outer world offers you appearances during the 7 days that seem to contradict the state, do not respond to them. The appearances are the old pattern still expressing itself. The new pattern is being set beneath the surface, and it has not yet fully emerged. Do not step into the wet concrete to argue with what is passing. When friends or family speak in ways that would once have pulled you back into the old identity, receive their words without engagement. You are not obligated to explain what you are doing. The 7 days are your private discipline. Guard them. Walk through the 7 days as one who is quietly setting the foundation of a new life. And on the 7th day, when the setting is complete, notice how the identity that once required effort now rests easily within you. Notice how the old identity has grown quieter, less confident, less able to reclaim you. Notice how the atmosphere of your days has begun to carry a different quality. You did not force anything. You did not struggle. You did not push against reality. You simply inhabited a state steadily for 7 undisturbed days and allowed the natural laws of consciousness to do what they have always been ready to do. The 7-day state is not a trick. It is not a shortcut. It is the recognition that consistency, not intensity, is what shapes a life. Choose your state, commit to the 7 days, and let the concrete set. Reality is waiting, quietly, on the other side of a single week.